Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Mind Your Exam. So in this video we will see the Python program to reverse a list. Now there are two main methods. One is the shortcut, which is using the built-in method of list, and the other one is writing down the entire process manually. So in either case, if we are given a list, then if the list contains 5 elements, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then the output of this program should be the reverse of that list. That means the element that was initially present at the last will now be present as the first element in the reverse list, then the element which was originally present at the second last position, and so on. And in the reverse list, the first element of the original list will now become the last element of the reverse list. Okay, so in case we have 5 elements, then the reverse list would look something like this, or in case we have 4 elements, which is an even number, then the list would look something like this. Okay, so the shortest way of doing this program is to use the built-in method of list, which is the reverse method. So the reverse method is directly called upon the original list that you want to reverse, and this makes the original list changed, and the output will now be the original list but containing all the elements in the reversed order. So the reverse method will change the elements of the original list itself. It will not create a copy. So here, if my list contains these values, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then if I call the function reverse on my list and then print my list, then I get the following as output. Let's say we have another value, say 6 and 7 and 8. Okay, now let's perform the same function and execute our program. Similarly, the reverse function has executed, and now it has returned the changed list, which is the reversed list. Now let's come to the second method of reversing a list. In this method, what we are basically doing is we are maintaining two variables, namely left and right. The left element or the left variable will store originally it will store the first element or the 0th element of the original list, and the right variable will store the last element or the rightmost element of the original list. At every step, we will keep on reversing the elements in the original list that are present at the leftmost and the rightmost position. So we will swap these elements, and once these elements are swapped, in the next iteration, as long as we have still more elements remaining in the list, then we will swap the next two elements from the left side and the right side. So what we are basically doing in this second function is we are maintaining one variable left, which is initialized to the value 0, the index 0, that means to the leftmost element of the original list. Then we have a variable right, which is initialized to the value, the index, which is the last index of the original list. Okay, so we are running the while loop, and we are running this loop as long as the value of left, that means the left index, is less than the right index. So why are we putting this condition? See, if there are odd number of elements, then we will eventually reach a point where the value of left and right will become the same. So if there are 5 elements, initially left would be 0 and the value of right would be 4. Then in the next iteration, when we increase left would become 1 and right would become 3. And in the next iteration, again when we change and update the values of left and right, both left and right will point to the index 2. So if there are odd number of elements in the list, then we only have to swap the left part of the list and the right part of the list, which are lying to the right and left of the middle element. But if there are even number of elements, then in that case there will come a scenario when we will when the value of left would become greater than the value of right, because initially left and right would be the first and the last elements, then left and right would be the second and the second last element, and eventually they will come exactly adjacent to each other, and in the next iteration they'll overlap. So this particular while loop condition maintains that the loop has to run only as long as we have more elements that can be swapped with each other so as to reverse the list. So in each iteration, we are storing the left element or the element at the left index in the variable temp. Then we are storing the element which is present at index right in the list into the place of the element that is present at index left. Okay, so we are swapping, and at the place of the element that was lying at index right, we will put the temp element. So originally temp contains the leftmost element, and this leftmost element will now be placed in the rightmost position. And before placing and overwriting the rightmost position, we have placed the rightmost element in the leftmost position, and so on. Now after this is done, we will move the left value one step ahead. That means the index left will now move one step forward in the list, whereas the index right will move one step backward in the list, and both these variables are moving towards the center of the list. Okay, so at last we return the updated list. So let's say we have a list containing 6 elements, and we call the function reverse list with this my list as an argument. Let's see what happens. Here we are getting the reversed list, and it contains all these elements in the reversed order. Now let's remove any one element and see how this function performs. In this case, we have odd number of elements, and again this function is performing correctly. So I hope you have understood this method of reversing a list. Thank you for watching. Till we meet in the next video. Mind your exam.